Pakistan says it hopes to host another round of peace talks between the United States and Iran as signs emerge of a possible diplomatic progress after weeks of conflict that have shaken global energy markets. The development comes as oil prices remain volatile, with investors closely watching negotiations over the Strait of Hormuz and the broader US-Iran standoff. Pakistan says it hopes to host another round of US-Iran peace talks soon, after Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif revealed Islamabad had received what he described as a serious indications from both Washington and Tehran about possible delegation-level negotiations. While officials cautioned that no final arrangements have been made yet, the Prime Minister said Pakistan remains engaged in diplomatic efforts aimed at ending the weeks-long conflict in the Middle East. Islamabad previously hosted indirect talks in April involving US President J.D. Vance and senior Iranian officials, marking Pakistan's growing role as a potential mediator in the crisis. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif also praised what he called President Donald Trump's extraordinary efforts to pursue peace, following a regional call involving leaders from Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates. Deputy Prime Minister Ishaq Dar said recent diplomatic engagement had brought the region closer to a possible breakthrough, stressing that dialogue and diplomacy must prevail over confrontation. President Donald Trump said the United States is taking a cautious approach to negotiations with Iran and wants any agreement to be fully finalized before easing pressures. Trump said the US naval blockade around the Strait of Hormuz will remain in place until a formal agreement is reached, certified, and signed. His comments come just one day after he suggested Washington and Tehran had largely negotiated the framework of a possible peace deal. Despite that optimism, both sides remain divided over key issues, including Iran's nuclear program, sanctions relief, and Tehran's demand for access to all frozen oil revenue held in abroad. Iran-linked media said Washington was still resisting some of Tehran's demands, especially over the release of frozen assets. Oil prices edged slightly higher as investors weighed hopes for diplomacy against ongoing supply concerns linked to the Strait of Hormuz crisis. Brent crude rose to around $105 a barrel, while US crude climbed close to $99 a barrel after both benchmarks had fallen sharply earlier in the week on expectations of a possible agreement. Analysts said markets remain cautious because traders are still pricing in the risk of disruption to the global energy flows through the Strait of Hormuz, which before the conflict handled roughly 1/5 of the world's oil and liquefied and natural gas supply. Iran has tightened its control over the waterway through a newly announced Persian Gulf Strait Authority, while the United States continues its blockade of Iranian ports. Although large-scale fighting has slowed down since the April ceasefire, supply concerns remain elevated. The US Energy Information Administration said Washington recorded its biggest ever withdrawal from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve last week, releasing nearly 10 million barrels of oil. American crude inventories also fell more than expected, adding to concerns about tightening global supply. Analysts warned that if restrictions in the Strait of Hormuz continue, global crude, refined fuel inventories could fall to some of the lowest seasonal levels in years. Trump has insisted any future deal must prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons, while Iranian officials continue to reject demands to completely halt nuclear activity. US officials say discussions are still ongoing over Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium, sanctions relief, and reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Critics in Washington have also questioned whether the emerging framework differs significantly from the 2015 nuclear deal that Trump abandoned during his first term. Pakistan is positioning itself once again as a diplomatic bridge between Washington and Tehran at a time when global energy markets remain highly sensitive to developments in the Gulf. And while hopes for another round of talks are growing, uncertainty around the Strait of Hormuz and the future of the conflict continues to weigh heavily on energy markets worldwide.